Chapter 10. The Last Dawn. The morning came gently, as if the world itself was tired of holding its breath. The fog drifted away in slow ribbons, sliding between the trees and dissolving into the pale gold of dawn. I sat by the river's edge, where the grass was still damp, and listened to the sound of water moving freely again. It had been a long night. A night of tears, light, and redemption. The father was gone, the boys were free, and the river, at last, was calm. Yet inside me, something was changing. A quiet ache, soft but deep, pulsed beneath my ribs. The kind of ache that comes not from pain, but from the weight of farewell. The river shimmered before me, smooth as glass. For the first time since all this began, I could see my reflection clearly. My face weathered and lined, my eyes brighter than they once were, and within them a faint flicker of gold, the same golden light that once lived in the woman of light. I knew what it meant. The river had chosen me, not as a visitor, not as a savior of others, but as its guardian. The thought both comforted and terrified me. As I sat there, a soft breeze carried whispers across the water. Voices, countless and gentle, weaving through the sound of the current. They weren't cries of sorrow or fear. They were songs of gratitude. Every soul that had ever passed through this place seemed to speak at once. A chorus of peace. And through it all, one voice rose above the rest, the one I knew best. Salvador. I turned, and there she was, the woman of light, standing once more upon the water, her radiance softer now, almost human. "You've done what few could," she said. "The river flows pure again. The balance is restored." I bowed my head. It wasn't me alone. They found their own peace. I was only the bridge. She smiled. Even bridges are sacred. Without them, no soul could cross. Her light brightened as she stepped closer. "But now you must choose." Her words echoed through me. "Choose." "Yes," she said. "The river no longer needs your strength, but it remembers your heart. You may stay and walk among the souls who drift between worlds, or you may return to the life you left behind." I looked back toward the forest. In the distance, I could see the faint outline of my cabin. Small, humble, almost hidden by trees. Smoke no longer rose from its chimney. The path to its door was overgrown. It felt like a memory, like something that belonged to someone else. "Will they remember me?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Some will. Most won't. Stories fade, but kindness remains. The river remembers everything, and that is enough." The thought of leaving the world behind filled me with quiet sadness. I remembered the faces of the villagers, the laughter of the children before the flood, the scent of bread baking on a quiet morning. Those moments, small and human, had been my life. But now, something within me whispered of greater things, of guiding souls through darkness, of being the light that I once sought. "What will become of me if I stay?" I asked. "You will walk the current," she said, "neither living nor dead. A guardian of passage, a voice in the water. You will never grow old, never hunger, never tire. But you will be alone." Her voice softened. "And yet, never truly lonely." I closed my eyes. The decision weighed on me like a stone, not because I feared death, but because I loved life too deeply. The earth beneath my feet, the laughter of children, the silence of nights by the fire. All of it had meaning because it ended. Would I lose that meaning if I stayed? And then I heard it. Two small voices, distant but clear. "Thank you, S.E.U. Salvador. Daniel and Gabriel." The boys. Their laughter rippled through the air like sunlight on water. And with it came peace, pure, total peace. I opened my eyes and smiled. "I understand," I said to the woman. The river doesn't need a savior. It needs a witness. Someone to remember that love is what keeps the current pure. She nodded slowly. Then what do you choose? I stood, feeling the wind shift around me, the world holding its breath once more. I choose to stay, I said. Not out of duty, but out of love. Her expression softened into something that almost looked like pride. Then you are no longer merely SEU Salvador, she said. You are the river's keeper. Light enveloped me, not blinding, not burning, but warm and endless. The water rose, swirling around my body, until I no longer felt where my skin ended and the current began. Every heartbeat, every memory, every sorrow melted into the rhythm of the river. I felt the pulse of 1,000 souls moving through me, not as pain but as harmony. The world above and the world beneath were one. And in that moment I understood everything. The river had never been just water. It was life itself, ever flowing, ever forgiving. And I was part of it. Years passed. Decades. Centuries, perhaps. Time no longer mattered. But sometimes, when the mist rises over the valley, the villagers still speak of a man they call SEU Salvador. They say that when someone is in danger near the river, the waters change, glowing faintly with golden light. And if you listen closely, you can hear his voice in the current. Hold on, you are not alone. The river flows. The world moves on. And I remain, not as legend, not as ghost, but as memory carried in water. Because some saviors do not seek glory. They seek peace. And in the endless current, I found mine. As I took my first step toward the sound, I felt the river move behind me, rising in silent waves. It was watching, guiding, waiting. For this was no longer just about saving others. This time, it was about saving what remained of myself. Chapter 9. The Father's Shadow. Narrated by SEU Salvador. The voice drew me deeper into the forest. It came in waves, shouting, sobbing, whispering, all tangled into one endless cry that split the silence of the night. I followed it without thinking. My lantern's light wavered with every step, barely cutting through the mist. And still, the voice echoed. Daniel, Gabriel, my boys. Every time he called, the forest seemed to flinch. The trees shivered. The air trembled. Even the river behind me pulsed heavier, its rhythm offbeat, restless. I knew what that meant. The river was warning me. This man, this father, was no longer bound entirely to the world of the living. His grief had opened a door between realms. And I was walking straight into it. I found him in a clearing near the old mill, where the fog swirled like ghosts around broken stones. He was kneeling by the riverbank, his hands clawing at the dirt, his clothes soaked, his face a ruin of sorrow. "Sir," I called softly. He didn't turn. He just kept digging, his breath ragged. "Sir," I tried again, stepping closer. "You'll hurt yourself." He froze. Slowly, he looked up, and when his eyes met mine, I understood why the river had called me. They weren't the eyes of a living man. They glowed faintly, washed in a pale blue light, the light of those trapped between. "Who are you?" he rasped. "My name is Salvador," I said quietly. "I came to help." He let out a bitter laugh, sharp, hollow, echoing in the mist. "Help? You can't help me. You're the one who took them." The words struck like stones. I stepped back. "No, I saved them." His laughter turned to a growl. "Saved? You call that saving? My boys should have lived. They should have come home. But you—" He pointed a trembling finger at me. "You brought them back only to take them away again." The wind picked up, swirling the fog between us like a living thing. I could feel the river's energy vibrating beneath the ground, the thin line between peace and chaos beginning to break. I steadied my breath. "Listen to me," I said. "Your sons are safe. They're with the river now. With the light. They are not gone." He slammed his fists into the ground. "Don't speak of light. I saw them, their faces, glowing like ghosts in the water. They called my name and vanished." His voice cracked. His shoulders trembled. And for the first time I saw not anger, but unbearable love. He wasn't trying to curse the river. He was trying to reach his children. I took a step forward. "They called to you because they wanted you to find peace. They can't move on until you do." He looked up, eyes burning. "Peace? How can a father have peace when his children are lost?" The air around us began to twist, the mist glowing faintly red. The river's pulse grew louder, like a heartbeat inside the earth. I realized what was happening. His grief was feeding the current. His rage was poisoning it. If I didn't stop him, the river could turn, flood the boundary between worlds, and pull countless souls into the void. I knelt in front of him, close enough to feel the heat of his anguish. "Listen to me," I whispered. "You're holding them here with your pain. You think it's love, but it's a chain. The more you cry out for them, the heavier that chain grows." He looked at me, tears streaking his dirt-covered face. "I just want to see them again." "You will," I said. "But not like this." I reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. The instant my skin touched his, the world shattered. The forest vanished. The ground dropped away. And suddenly we were standing in the river itself, the true river, vast and endless, flowing through light and shadow alike. Beneath us, faces drifted past, memories, souls, moments frozen in time. Above us, the sky burned gold, but the current below pulsed dark, corrupted. The father fell to his knees, clutching his head. "What is this?" he cried. "This," I said, "is what your pain has done." He looked down. The water beneath his feet turned black. Within it, two faint lights flickered, small, fragile, familiar. His sons. Daniel. Gabriel. He reached for them. But as his hands touched the surface, the lights drifted farther away. He screamed, "I can't reach them." "You can," I said gently, "but not with sorrow, only with surrender." He turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "I don't know how." "You do," I whispered. "You taught them love. Now let that love free them." He closed his eyes. The river roared around us. For a moment, everything shook, light, shadow, memory, all spiraling into one blinding swirl. Then he began to speak. "I'm sorry, my sons. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I held on so tight that I forgot to let you go." His voice cracked. "But if you can hear me, know that I love you. Always." He opened his hands. And from them, the dark water began to rise, lifting like smoke, then fading into silver mist. The two lights returned, brighter than before, and as they reached the surface, they merged into one. A warmth spread through the air, soft and pure. The river stilled. The darkness faded. He looked at me, tears shining in his eyes. "They're gone, but I can feel them." "They're home," I said softly. He smiled for the first time, a small, peaceful smile. And then his body began to dissolve into the same gentle light that surrounded his sons. Before he vanished completely, he whispered, "Thank you, Savior." Then he was gone. I was alone again, standing in the current. But the river was quiet now, balanced. For the first time in many nights, the water reflected the sky, clear and full of stars. I felt her presence beside me, the woman of light. "You have done what few ever could," she said. "You gave peace to the living and the lost alike." I turned to her. What will become of me now?" She smiled sadly. "The river flows through you, Salvador. It always will. But tonight it rests. And so should you." Her hand brushed my cheek, warm, weightless. Then she faded into the current, leaving only the whisper of her voice behind. "Rest, for dawn comes soon." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the forest floor, the sound of real water flowing nearby. The mist was lifting. The sky was pale with the first light of morning. I looked toward the river, and for a brief, sacred moment I saw 3 figures walking across its surface. The father and his 2 sons, hand in hand, bathed in silver light. Then they were gone, and I wept, not for loss, but for peace. "And your purpose?" I sat down slowly. My hands trembled. He didn't stop. "Long ago," he said, "there were others like you. Guardians, they called themselves. People chosen by the river's spirit to maintain the balance between the living and the lost. But most couldn't bear the weight. Some went mad. Some disappeared entirely, taken by the current." He paused, studying my face. "You've survived longer than most, which means the river favors you." "I never asked for any of this," I said quietly. He smiled sadly. "No one ever does." Then, after a long silence, he said something that made the air leave my lungs. "You've seen her, haven't you? The woman of light." I looked up sharply. "You know about her?" He nodded. "She was the first." I stared at him, not breathing. "The first what?" "The first guardian. The one who gave herself to the current and became its voice. Her light guides the river now, and she chooses those who will follow after." My chest ached. The dream. The face. The voice. It all came back in a rush. She said I'd been chosen to bear the cost," I murmured. He nodded slowly. "And you did. You paid the price when you gave life to the boys. That's why they were marked. Why they glowed." I swallowed hard. "Where are they now?" His eyes softened. "With her. Between here and the beyond. You made them part of the flow." The silence that followed was unbearable. Only the fire cracked between us, casting orange light over his face. Finally I asked, "Why are you telling me all this?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because the river is shifting. It's growing restless. Something has disturbed the balance again. Far from here, but it's spreading. The waters are rising, not just in your land, but everywhere." He stood slowly. "You've been chosen once already. Now the river calls for you again." My heart pounded. "You mean I have to go back?" He nodded. "There's another soul waiting, one the river cannot claim and cannot release. If it stays trapped, the flow will break." I stared at the stone still pulsing on the table. "And if I refuse?" His expression darkened. "Then everything you've ever saved will be lost." He turned toward the door, pulling his hood up again. At the threshold, he paused and looked back at me one last time. "Midnight tomorrow," he said. "Follow the river downstream. You'll find where the water meets the mist. There, you'll understand what you must do." And before I could speak, he was gone, swallowed by the night as if the forest itself had taken him. I stood there in silence, the echoes of his words still ringing in my mind. The river calls again. And this time, I wasn't sure I'd survive answering it. Chapter 8. The River Beyond the Mist. Narrated by S.E.U. Salvador. The night after the stranger left, I didn't sleep. His words haunted me like the echo of thunder in a quiet valley. The river is calling again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, the woman of light, standing at the edge of a foggy shore, her hand outstretched. And behind her, 2 small figures. The boys. They were smiling. But their smiles weren't of joy, they were of farewell. At dawn, I packed what little I had, a lantern, a length of rope, and the old wooden cross that hung by my bed since I was a child. Then I began to walk. The path that led to the river was overgrown. It had been weeks since I dared to go there again. The forest seemed different this time, heavier, denser, alive in ways that whispered to the bones. Every step I took stirred the mist that clung to the ground. It wasn't just morning fog, it shimmered faintly, like light trapped in water. The deeper I went, the more the world around me began to shift. Colors softened. Sounds stretched. Time slowed. I realized then I wasn't walking through the forest anymore. The river was drawing me in. When I reached the bank, the water was still. No ripple, no sound. Just silence. But beneath that silence, I could feel it, the pulse. Like a heartbeat beneath the surface. I knelt by the edge and touched the water. Cold. Then warm. Then something else entirely, as if it knew me. "Show me," I whispered. "Show me where I must go." The river responded. Light began to bloom across the surface, swirling like liquid gold. And before I could breathe, the current surged upward, wrapping around me like arms made of wind and water. The world dissolved. When I opened my eyes, I was standing somewhere else. The air was thick and blue-gray. Mist coiled around my feet like smoke. The river stretched before me, but it wasn't water anymore. It was glass. And beneath that glass, shadows moved, shapes of people, drifting like forgotten dreams. I took a step, and the surface held my weight. It hummed faintly under my feet. I walked for what felt like hours, though time meant nothing there. Each step brought memories, not mine, but others. A woman crying by a window. A child reaching for a father who never returned. A soldier clutching a medal and whispering a name. The river carried all of them, every sorrow, every final breath. And somehow I was part of it. Then, from the fog, a voice called out, "Salvador." I froze. It wasn't the stranger's voice. It was hers. "Salvador, come closer." The mist parted slowly, revealing her, the woman of light. She was more radiant than before, her body woven from streams of glowing water, her eyes deep as the stars reflected in the current. "You came," she said softly. "The river is pleased." "I came because I was called," I replied, my voice trembling. "Tell me why. Tell me what I must do." She stepped closer, her light brushing against my skin like warmth on a cold night. "There is a soul that refuses to cross. A soul bound by anger and pain. The river cannot flow freely until it is released." "Who is it?" I asked. Her gaze dropped, and when she looked at me again, sorrow filled her eyes. "It is one of your own." The words struck like thunder. "One of mine?" "Yes," she whispered. "The father of the boys you saved." My knees weakened. I had never met him, but I knew what she meant. The man who had lost everything to the river's cruelty, his children, his peace, his will to live. "He blames the water," she continued. "He curses it every night, holding his pain close. His rage holds him between life and death. You must find him, and let him go." I stared at the river beneath my feet. "And if I fail?" "Then the current will turn dark. Every soul it touches will lose its way. Even those you've saved." Her light flickered, like a candle in wind. "Go, Salvador. Find him before the next moon rises. The river depends on you." The mist began to swirl again, faster, thicker, until I could barely see her face. I reached out, desperate. "Wait. Tell me, how do I bring peace to a man who has lost his heart?" Her voice echoed faintly as the world dissolved around me. "Through truth. and through sacrifice. Then everything went white. When I awoke, I was back on the riverbank, lying in the mud, soaked and trembling. The lantern beside me still glowed faintly, though its flame had gone out. Above me, the moon hung low and pale, not the same moon I'd known. And from somewhere beyond the trees, I heard it, a cry. A man's voice, raw and broken, calling a name again and again. Daniel. Gabriel. The boys' names. My chest tightened. It was him. The Father. The one who couldn't let go. I rose to my feet, my heart pounding like a drum. The forest stretched before me, darker than before, alive with whispers. And somewhere out there, the soul that defied the river waited, trapped between grief and fury. The river wasn't done with me. That night, I dreamed again. I was standing in shallow water, and the two boys stood before me, their hands glowing brighter and brighter until I could no longer see their faces. The voice came once more, calm, almost sorrowful. You gave them life, it said. Now, part of yours lives in them. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. The balance must hold, it continued. What you saved has been written into them. The river's flow runs through their veins now, as it does through yours. The light around them grew so intense that it became unbearable. And then, suddenly, the water around us turned black. The boys began to sink. I reached out, but they were pulled beneath the surface. Wait! I shouted. They're only children. The voice answered softly. So were you once. I woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the echo of water still in my ears. The next morning, I went to the village. I needed to see them again, to know they were safe, real, human. When I arrived, the streets were quiet. Mothers called to their children from open doorways, chickens scratched at the dirt, life went on as always. But when I reached their home, I found their mother outside, weeping. I froze. They're gone, she whispered. I thought they went to play near the woods, but they never came back. The other children saw them walking toward the river. My heart turned to stone. The river. Again. I didn't wait another word. I ran, through the narrow paths, past the fields, into the forest. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. The air grew colder with every step. When I reached the riverbank, the sight struck me like lightning. The boys stood in the shallow water, perfectly still, facing the current. Their eyes glowed bright gold. Come back! I shouted. Step away from it. They didn't move. I waded in, the cold slicing through me. The water swirled violently around their feet, though the river itself was calm beyond them. Listen to me. I called. You mustn't go. The older one turned his head slowly, his face serene, almost peaceful. It's calling us, he said. The same way it calls you. No, I said, my voice breaking. You don't understand what it wants. He smiled sadly. It doesn't want. It is. It's life and death and everything between. You gave it to us. The younger one looked up at me, tears shining in his golden eyes. It doesn't hurt, he whispered. It feels like home. And before I could reach them, they stepped deeper into the water, together. Panic tore through me. I lunged forward, but the river rose between us, a wall of water shimmering with light. I tried to push through it, but it was like touching fire and ice at once. The light blinded me, filling every corner of my mind until I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. Then I saw them, the boys, standing hand in hand within the glow, smiling. And behind them, the same figure of light from my dreams. The woman of the river. She looked at me, her eyes gentle. Do not fear, she said. They are not lost. You have given them what few are ever offered, the bridge between worlds. They will guide others as you once did. I don't want to lose them, I whispered. Her voice softened. You never will. They are your echo, the proof of your sacrifice. And one day, when your time ends, the current will carry you to them. The light began to fade, the water lowering back into calm ripples. When I opened my eyes again, the river was still. The boys were gone. I fell to my knees. The silence around me was unbearable, heavier than any storm. For a long time I said nothing. But then a sound broke the stillness. Laughter. Faint, distant, like children playing far away. It echoed through the forest, carried by the breeze, and though I knew it wasn't real, I smiled. Because sometimes the things we lose are not gone, they simply change form, becoming part of everything around us. And as the river flowed quietly beside me, I whispered to it, "Take care of them." The water shimmered once, like a nod, and I walked back home, with the setting sun at my back and the sound of their laughter fading into the wind. Chapter 7. The Man Who Came at Midnight. Narrated by S.E.U. Salvador himself. It had been weeks since the river took the boys, weeks since the forest grew quiet again. And yet, not a night went by without me hearing their laughter in the wind. Soft, distant, like echoes of something holy and gone. The villagers still avoided my cabin. They crossed themselves when they passed by the path that led here. To them I had become something other than a man. Not a saint, not a demon, but something between. A guardian of things they did not wish to understand. I didn't blame them. Sometimes, even I wasn't sure what I had become. The light within me was no longer warm. It flickered faintly, deep inside my chest, like an ember that refused to die. Some nights, when the wind blew from the river, I could feel it pulse stronger, as if answering a call I didn't want to hear. That was the night he came. It was just after midnight. The fire had burned low, shadows dancing on the cabin walls. I was sitting alone, mending a lantern wick, when I heard it, 3 knocks on the door. Slow, steady, uncertain. Nobody visited me at night any more. For a long moment I didn't move. The forest was silent outside. No crickets, no wind, no sound at all. Only those 3 knocks, echoing softly like a heartbeat. Finally, I rose and opened the door. A man stood there, tall and thin, wrapped in a dark cloak soaked with rain. His face was half hidden beneath a hood, but his eyes, I'll never forget those eyes. They were the color of river water at dusk. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, his voice calm, deep and tired. "I've walked a long way to find you, S.E.U. Salvador." The way he spoke my name made my skin prickle. He didn't sound like a villager. His words were precise, deliberate, as if he'd practiced them for years. "Who are you?" I asked. "And what do you want?" He stepped inside without waiting for an answer. The air grew colder as he entered. When he pulled back his hood, I saw a face marked by time, lined, weathered, but strangely familiar. "My name doesn't matter," he said, glancing at the flickering fire. "What matters is what you carry." He looked around the cabin, eyes pausing on the shelves filled with herbs, candles, and worn books. Then he turned to me again. "You've touched the river," he said, "and it has touched you back." I froze. No one could have known that. "I've seen the signs," he continued. "The light in your eyes, the change in your voice, the silence that follows you." He smiled faintly, not cruelly but knowingly. "You've crossed the line that separates life from the current beneath it. That is no small thing." My throat tightened. "How do you know about that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his cloak and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. When he placed it on the table, I felt the air shift again, heavier, sharper. It was a stone. Smooth, black as obsidian, with faint lines of gold running through it like veins. "This," he said, "is what remains when the river takes someone completely." He looked up at me, eyes shining. "Do you understand what that means?" I didn't. Not yet. But I could feel the stone's pulse, faint but alive, the same rhythm that lived inside me. He continued, his voice low. "There is more than one river in this world. There are rivers of water, yes, but also rivers of time, of memory, of souls. Yours flows between them. That is your curse." The stronger the pull became, not physical, but spiritual, like the earth itself was drawing me in. When I reached the riverbank, I saw it waiting. The same stretch of water where I had saved the boys. But it wasn't calm this time. It churned and boiled, even though no wind stirred. The current moved in circles, spiraling inward, as if something beneath the surface was breathing, alive, aware, waiting. I took a step forward. The ground beneath my feet was wet, soft, trembling. "Why do you call me?" I said aloud. "What do you want?" The water rippled. The voice returned, clear now, like words carried on waves. "You broke the order," it said. "You touched what should not be touched." "I saved them," I answered. "I saved a child from dying. Isn't that what any soul should do?" "Not when the time is not theirs to live," it whispered. Then the water rose. At first, I thought it was the tide. But no, the surface lifted upward like a living thing, forming a shape, a figure. For an instant, I saw a face in it, not human, not divine, but something ancient, carved from the flow itself. Its eyes were the color of the deep, endless and merciless. "You have what belongs to me," it said. And in that moment I understood. The light inside me. The gift. It wasn't a blessing. It was borrowed. Taken from the same force that gives life and takes it back, the balance of all things. "I didn't ask for this," I whispered. "No one ever does," the voice replied. The river's surface trembled, sending waves across the bank. Water splashed against my legs, freezing cold. The voice grew louder, echoing inside my mind until it was unbearable. "Return what you have taken, or the land will pay the debt." A gust of wind tore through the forest. I fell to my knees, gripping the wet earth. Images flashed before me. The village, the children, the mother whose son I healed. I saw them all surrounded by floodwater, the river overflowing its banks, consuming everything in its path. "No!" I cried out. "Take me, not them." The water stilled. A long silence. Then, "Prove it." The next moment, the sky opened. Rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the ground like drums of war. The river swelled instantly, roaring louder, wilder. I stumbled into it. The cold hit me like knives. The current seized me, pulling me under, dragging me toward the center. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest burned, my eyes stung. But deep beneath the surface, I saw something glowing, faint, golden, pulsing like a heart. The same light I had given the boys. My light. Or rather, its light. I reached for it. My hands trembled, the current pulling me down, spinning me in circles. But I fought, with every breath, every memory, every ounce of faith I had left. The river roared, and in that roar I heard screams, laughter, prayers, all the lives I had touched echoing in the depths. When my fingers finally brushed the light, everything stopped. No sound, no water, no pain. I was floating in silence, surrounded by warmth, the same golden glow that had once flowed through me. A voice spoke, gentle this time. "Would you give yourself to restore what you've broken?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. The light pulsed once, twice, then entered me. But instead of warmth, I felt fire. Every nerve, every cell, every thought burned. My body wasn't mine anymore. It was dissolving, breaking apart and reforming all at once. Then came the cold again, the crushing weight of the river, and I screamed, but no sound came out. When I woke, I was lying on the shore. The rain had stopped. The river was calm again, smooth as glass. The sun was rising, painting the sky with pink and gold. I was alive. But something was different. I looked at my reflection in the water. My eyes glowed faintly, the same golden hue as the light itself. My hands no longer trembled. My heart beat steady and slow. And inside me I felt peace. Not the absence of pain, but the balance of it. I knew then that the river had accepted my offering. It had not taken my life, not yet, but it had marked me. From that day forward, I would no longer belong entirely to the world of the living. I would walk between, half man, half memory, carrying the current of the river in my soul. And whenever danger called, I would hear it through the water. Chapter 6. The Children Return. It had been half a year since the river took my breath and gave it back. Half a year since I walked between life and death and came out changed. The villagers had begun to forget the storm. The memory of fear always fades faster than the fear itself. They went back to their routines, fishing, tending to crops, whispering prayers before sleep, pretending the world had returned to normal. But I knew better. Nothing ever returns to what it was once touched by the river. My days had grown quiet again. The people came less often. Some said I had lost my power, others said the forest had taken it back. Both were true in a way. I spent my mornings tending to my small garden, and my nights listening to the sounds of the wind through the trees. The forest spoke softly now, in tones I almost understood. Sometimes I thought I heard children laughing in the distance, faint echoes carried through the mist. I told myself it was memory, nothing more, until the day they appeared. It was late afternoon. The sun was beginning to fall behind the hills, painting the sky with fire. I was gathering herbs near the edge of the forest when I heard footsteps behind me, soft, hesitant. When I turned, I saw them. The boys. The same two I had pulled from the river's jaws months before. But they weren't the same. They stood taller now, their faces brighter, their eyes glowing faintly, almost imperceptibly, with that same golden shimmer I saw in my own reflection after the storm. "SCU Salvador," the younger one cried. His voice was light, full of wonder. "Mother said we could visit. She said we should thank you again." I smiled, but something deep inside me stirred uneasily. There was a warmth about them that didn't belong to this world. When they came closer, the air around them changed. The forest grew still, birds fell silent, and even the wind seemed to wait. The older boy looked at me with eyes far wiser than his years. "You've been to the river," he said. The words froze me. I hadn't told anyone. "Who told you that?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "We just know." They stayed with me until dusk. We sat by the fire, and I told them stories. Old ones, about the forest spirits and the first settlers who built the village from nothing but faith and wood. They laughed, they listened, and for a while I forgot the heaviness in my heart. But as the flames danced in their eyes, I saw it again, that same golden light flickering beneath their skin. It pulsed gently, like a second heartbeat. The light that once was mine. When they finally stood to leave, the younger one turned back. "Can we visit again?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "But tell your mother first. She worries." He nodded, smiling, and as he ran off down the trail, a spark of golden light followed him, fading into the dusk like fireflies. I stood alone long after they disappeared, staring at the place where the light had gone. And for the first time in many weeks, I felt something move inside my chest. Not the old warmth of power, but something deeper. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I could see flashes of golden light moving through my veins, faint and warm, as if my blood had learned how to glow. At night, I dreamed of water. Not the violent roaring river I had fought, but calm, endless water, still as glass. I would stand upon it, feeling the reflection of the moon beneath my feet. And in that reflection I would see faces, people I didn't know, calling for help, their mouths open in silent cries. When I woke, my chest ached with a heaviness I couldn't shake. One afternoon, as I sat by the edge of the forest gathering herbs for tea, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, hesitant. I turned. It was one of the boys, the older one, wearing a white shirt too large for him, his hair still damp with river water though days had passed. He stared at me with wide, uncertain eyes. "SCU Salvador?" he asked softly. I nodded. "You should be resting, boy. The river takes time to leave your bones." He hesitated, looking down at the ground. "I wanted to thank you," he said. His voice trembled a little. "Mama said you saved us, that you carried us through the forest, and that you brought my brother back when he stopped breathing." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I looked away, pretending to focus on the herbs in my hands. "I just did what anyone would do," I said. He shook his head. "No, sir." The healer said, "She said you did something she's never seen before. She said you glowed." I froze. "Glowed," I repeated, pretending to smile. Maybe the lightning fooled her eyes. The boy frowned, unconvinced. Children see truth better than grown men ever can. He stepped closer. "When I woke up, I thought I saw something too. Light, like sunlight under water. It came from your hands." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes full of questions too big for him to ask. Then he nodded slowly, as if he understood more than I thought. "My brother says you're magic," he whispered. "But I think you're just kind." And then, before I could reply, he turned and ran back toward the village. That night I sat by the fire for a long time, staring into the flames. His words stayed with me: magic, kindness. Was there really a difference? I thought of all the times I had felt that pulse within me, the invisible warning that someone was in danger. Was that not magic too? Was that not kindness made visible through something greater than understanding? The line between miracle and mystery had always been thin in this land. The villagers prayed to the river when they needed rain, to the forest when they needed mercy, to the wind when they feared storms. Perhaps my light was simply another voice in that great harmony of life, a whisper from something divine. But if that was true, why did it hurt so much to carry? I placed my hands on the table. They were trembling again, though not from cold. The skin looked older, lined, thin. The veins glowed faintly beneath the surface, like veins of gold buried beneath stone. And suddenly I felt it, a presence soft and familiar, standing just behind me. I turned. The room was empty. But the air had changed, warmer, brighter. I could smell something sweet, like burning sage. And in that stillness I heard a voice. "Salvador." It wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. In the walls, in the fire, in my very breath. "Who's there?" I whispered. The voice answered, calm and ancient. "The light within you does not belong to you alone. It is borrowed. It is meant to be given, and when it is given, a part of you returns to where it came from." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "And where does it come from?" I asked. "From the source," the voice said. "The same place where all life begins, and where all life returns." The fire flickered. For a moment I thought I saw a shape in the flames, a woman's silhouette, woven from gold and smoke. I blinked, and it was gone. The voice faded with her. Only the crackle of fire remained. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I walked outside, barefoot, beneath the stars. The air was cool, the ground damp with dew. The forest stretched before me, endless, alive. I could feel it breathing again, not watching this time, but welcoming me. Somewhere deep among the trees, an owl called. The sound echoed like a question I didn't know how to answer. I looked toward the river valley, where the moonlight shimmered on the water's surface. It was calm now, as if pretending it had never tried to steal 2 innocent lives. And yet, I couldn't hate it. The river was part of the same life that flowed through me, unpredictable, wild, but necessary. I realized, standing there, that I wasn't just connected to the people I saved. I was connected to everything: the trees, the wind, the soil, the very heartbeat of the world. And that terrified me more than death itself. Because if I was part of everything, then everything could one day claim me back. When dawn came, I was still standing there, staring at the horizon as the first light spilled across the treetops. My breath turned to mist in the air, soft and white. In the distance, I saw movement. 2 small figures running down the path from the village, the boys I had saved. They waved when they saw me, calling my name, their laughter breaking the silence of the forest. For a moment, I smiled. Their voices were proof that life, fragile as it is, always finds its way back to light. But deep inside, I knew something that they didn't. Every time I gave that light, I lost a little more of myself. And one day, the forest would call again. And when it did, I might not come back. Chapter 4. The Village Awakens. For days after the river took its victims and returned them alive, the village changed. You could feel it in the air, heavier, slower, filled with whispers that traveled faster than wind. When I walked through the narrow dirt paths between houses, I could sense their eyes on me. Women washing clothes in the stream paused to look up. Men sharpening machetes pretended not to watch. Even the children, who once waved and laughed, grew silent when I passed. The story had spread faster than the current itself. They said I had called lightning with my hands. They said I had spoken words that made death turn away. Some said I was a saint. Others whispered I was cursed. And in truth, I didn't know which of the two I feared more. It was a market day when I heard the first rumor face to face. Old Dona Mirella, who sold fruit and herbs by the square, called out to me. Her voice was soft, careful, like someone speaking to a ghost who might answer back. "Seu Salvador," she said, her wrinkled hands shaking as she offered me a mango. "The Lord has blessed you, hasn't he? People say you brought those boys back from death." I hesitated. "The river gave them back," I said. "I only helped." She smiled, but her eyes were searching. "Oh no, senor. The river doesn't give back what it takes. Not unless someone pays for it." Her words stung, not because I believed her, but because something inside me did. I thanked her and moved on, but the whispers followed, not just behind me, but ahead too, as if they ran along the air before I arrived anywhere. That evening, when I returned to my cabin, I found a small bundle on my doorstep, wrapped in old cloth, tied with a red thread. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside were offerings, a small candle, a coin, and a dried sprig of rosemary. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I could see flashes of golden light moving through my veins, faint and warm, as if my blood had learned how to glow. At night, I dreamed of water. Not the violent roaring river I had fought, but calm, endless water, still as glass. I would stand upon it, feeling the reflection of the moon beneath my feet. And in that reflection I would see faces, people I didn't know, calling for help, their mouths open in silent cries. When I woke, my chest ached with a heaviness I couldn't shake. One afternoon, as I sat by the edge of the forest gathering herbs for tea, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, hesitant. I turned. It was one of the boys, the older one, wearing a white shirt too large for him, his hair still damp with river water though days had passed. He stared at me with wide, uncertain eyes. "See you, Salvador?" he asked softly. I nodded. "You should be resting, boy. The river takes time to leave your bones." He hesitated, looking down at the ground. "I wanted to thank you," he said. His voice trembled a little. "Mama said you saved us, that you carried us through the forest, and that you brought my brother back when he stopped breathing." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I looked away, pretending to focus on the herbs in my hands. "I just did what anyone would do," I said. He shook his head. "No, sir," the healer said. "She said you did something she's never seen before. She said you glowed." I froze. "Glowed," I repeated, pretending to smile. Maybe the lightning fooled her eyes. The boy frowned, unconvinced. Children see truth better than grown men ever can. He stepped closer. "When I woke up, I thought I saw something too. Light, like sunlight under water. It came from your hands." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes full of questions too big for him to ask. Then he nodded slowly, as if he understood more than I thought. "My brother says you're magic," he whispered. "But I think you're just kind." And then, before I could reply, he turned and ran back toward the village. That night, I sat by the fire for a long time, staring into the flames. His words stayed with me: magic, kindness. Was there really a difference? I thought of all the times I had felt that pulse within me, the invisible warning that someone was in danger. Was that not magic too? Was that not kindness made visible through something greater than understanding? The line between miracle and mystery had always been thin in this land. The villagers prayed to the river when they needed rain, to the forest when they needed mercy, to the wind when they feared storms. Perhaps my light was simply another voice in that great harmony of life, a whisper from something divine. But if that was true, why did it hurt so much to carry? I placed my hands on the table. They were trembling again, though not from cold. The skin looked older, lined, thin. The veins glowed faintly beneath the surface, like veins of gold buried beneath stone. And suddenly, I felt it, a presence, soft and familiar, standing just behind me. I turned. The room was empty. But the air had changed, warmer, brighter. I could smell something sweet, like burning sage. And in that stillness, I heard a voice. "Salvador." It wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. In the walls, in the fire, in my very breath. "Who's there?" I whispered. The voice answered, calm and ancient. "The light within you does not belong to you alone. It is borrowed. It is meant to be given, and when it is given, a part of you returns to where it came from." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "And where does it come from?" I asked. "From the source," the voice said. "The same place where all life begins, and where all life returns." The fire flickered. For a moment, I thought I saw a shape in the flames, a woman's silhouette, woven from gold and smoke. I blinked, and it was gone. The voice faded with her. Only the crackle of fire remained. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I walked outside, barefoot, beneath the stars. The air was cool, the ground damp with dew. The forest stretched before me, endless, alive. I could feel it breathing again, not watching this time, but welcoming me. Somewhere deep among the trees, an owl called. The sound echoed like a question I didn't know how to answer. I looked toward the river valley, where the moonlight shimmered on the water's surface. It was calm now, as if pretending it had never tried to steal 2 innocent lives. And yet, I couldn't hate it. The river was part of the same life that flowed through me, unpredictable, wild, but necessary. I realized, standing there, that I wasn't just connected to the people I saved. I was connected to everything: the trees, the wind, the soil, the very heartbeat of the world. And that terrified me more than death itself. Because if I was part of everything, then everything could one day claim me back. When dawn came, I was still standing there, staring at the horizon as the first light spilled across the treetops. My breath turned to mist in the air, soft and white. In the distance, I saw movement, 2 small figures running down the path from the village, the boys I had saved. They waved when they saw me, calling my name, their laughter breaking the silence of the forest. For a moment, I smiled. Their voices were proof that life, fragile as it is, always finds its way back to light. But deep inside, I knew something that they didn't. Every time I gave that light, I lost a little more of myself. And one day, the forest would call again. And when it did, I might not come back. Chapter 4. The Village Awakens. For days after the river took its victims and returned them alive, the village changed. You could feel it in the air, heavier, slower, filled with whispers that traveled faster than wind. When I walked through the narrow dirt paths between houses, I could sense their eyes on me. Women washing clothes in the stream paused to look up. Men sharpening machetes pretended not to watch. Even the children, who once waved and laughed, grew silent when I passed. The story had spread faster than the current itself. They said I had called lightning with my hands. They said I had spoken words that made death turn away. Some said I was a saint. Others whispered I was cursed. And in truth, I didn't know which of the two I feared more. It was a market day when I heard the first rumor face to face. Old Dona Mirella, who sold fruit and herbs by the square, called out to me. Her voice was soft, careful, like someone speaking to a ghost who might answer back. "Seu Salvador," she said, her wrinkled hands shaking as she offered me a mango. "The Lord has blessed you, hasn't he? People say you brought those boys back from death." I hesitated. "The river gave them back," I said. "I only helped." She smiled, but her eyes were searching. "Oh no, senor. The river doesn't give back what it takes. Not unless someone pays for it." Her words stung, not because I believed her, but because something inside me did. I thanked her and moved on, but the whispers followed, not just behind me, but ahead too, as if they ran along the air before I arrived anywhere. That evening, when I returned to my cabin, I found a small bundle on my doorstep, wrapped in old cloth, tied with a red thread. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside were offerings, a small candle, a coin, and a dried sprig of rosemary. Chapter 2. The Race Against Time. The forest was quiet again, but inside me everything was chaos. I sat on the wet ground beside the 2 boys, their small bodies trembling in the fading light. The river, that monstrous force that had nearly taken them, now murmured softly, almost as if ashamed of what it had done. I looked at them, one breathing weakly, the other still unconscious, but alive. Their tiny chests rose and fell unevenly, fragile as flickering candles. I knew I couldn't leave them here. Night was coming fast, and the forest at night is no place for children, or for anyone who values their soul. The shadows between the trees had already begun to stretch. The air grew colder, thick with mist. A strange silence fell, the kind that comes when every creature decides to listen. I gathered my strength and lifted the first boy, the smaller one, onto my back. His body was light, but my legs trembled from exhaustion. The older one stirred faintly, his eyes fluttering open for a moment. "Don't leave him," he whispered. His voice was weak, cracked from swallowing half the river. "I won't," I said softly. "You're both coming home." I tied the smaller boy gently across my back with my old wool blanket, then lifted the other in my arms. My muscles burned. The water had stolen nearly all my strength, but the pulse inside me, that mysterious light, still hummed faintly, pushing me forward. One step after another, I began the long walk back through the forest. Each footstep felt heavier than the last. The forest path that had once been familiar now looked endless, winding through mist and shadow. Every tree seemed to lean closer, watching, whispering in a language only I could feel. The boys' breathing kept me grounded, shallow, fragile, but there. I could hear their hearts, faint rhythms of life reminding me that I hadn't failed. I whispered a prayer with every breath. Let them live. Let me make it in time. The sky turned gray, then purple, then a deep shade of indigo. The forest filled with the sounds of night, crickets, frogs, the faraway cry of an owl. I knew that if I stopped, even for a moment, exhaustion would take me. My knees threatened to give out, my vision swam, and yet I kept walking. Because I had to. Because that's what I was. A savior does not rest when there is still breath to protect. At some point, I stumbled and fell. The boy in my arms slipped from my grasp, landing softly on the grass. Panic surged through me as I reached for him, but he was still breathing. A soft sigh escaped his lips. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by a wave of pain so sharp that I nearly cried out. My shoulder ached, my chest burned, my head pounded. I looked up. Through the gaps in the trees, I could see faint lights, the glow of the village torches in the distance. We were close. But close was not enough. I forced myself up, biting back a groan. The weight on my back pulled hard against my spine. I whispered to the forest itself, like an old friend. Just a little more. Help me get them home. And somehow, I swear the forest answered. The wind picked up, gentle and warm, guiding me through the darkness. The roots beneath my feet no longer tripped me. They seemed to bend, clearing the way. Even the moon broke through the clouds, lighting my path with silver light. I moved like a shadow between trees, carried by something greater than myself. When I reached the edge of the village, the dogs barked first. Then, lights appeared in the windows. People began to shout, voices filled with confusion and fear. "It's SEU Salvador," someone cried. "He has the children." Within moments, a crowd gathered. Mothers ran barefoot through the mud, tears streaming down their faces. They fell to their knees beside the boys, calling their names, touching their faces, their hair, their hands. I stood there, soaked, trembling, half-conscious, as the villagers surrounded them. One of the elders, old Mata, the midwife who had delivered half the village, looked at me with wide eyes. "What happened?" she asked. "The river," I managed to say. "It tried to take them. But I took them back." She stared at me as if she wanted to ask more, but I was too tired to explain. Too tired to talk about the voice, the light, the strange power that had flowed through me. That was not a story for now. Someone offered me a cloak. Someone else a hand. I shook my head. "They need warmth," I said, pointing to the boys. "Dry them. Feed them. Let them sleep." And then, before anyone could thank me or ask questions, I turned and walked away. The path back to my cabin felt endless. My legs dragged, my breath came in short gasps. Every step felt like it was pulling the life out of me. By the time I reached my porch, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. I sat down on the steps and stared at the forest. The mist hung low over the river valley, glowing gold in the early sun. The sound of water had softened, peaceful now, as if pretending it had never been a monster the night before. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I let myself feel the exhaustion, the ache, the strange emptiness inside me. When I had given the boy my energy, my light, something had left me. I could feel it missing now, like a piece of my soul had been poured into him. It didn't hurt exactly, but it felt like aging. Like time had taken a step forward for me alone. I looked down at my hands. They trembled faintly, veins more visible, the skin a little thinner. And yet, in my heart, I felt peace. They were alive. That was all that mattered. As I sat there, the forest began to stir again. The distant chatter of birds, the soft rustle of leaves, the hum of insects waking with the sun. Life went on, as it always does. But inside me, something had changed. That night, when I closed my eyes, I didn't dream of rivers or storms. I dreamed of light, soft, golden light, pulsing like a heartbeat in the center of the forest. And a voice, calm, deep, familiar, whispered through the dream. Salvador, every act of salvation has a cost. But you have been chosen to bear it. I woke with tears on my face, unsure if they were of sorrow or gratitude. The morning air was warm, and the world was quiet once more. Somewhere in the village, two mothers were waking up to the laughter of their children again. And though my body ached and my strength waned, I smiled. Because that laughter, that fragile human sound, was worth any price. And I knew, deep inside, this would not be the last time I'd be called. Chapter 3. Between Life and Death. The days after the rescue passed like a blur. I don't remember sleeping, though I must have, because sometimes I woke to find the fire cold, and the candles burned to nothing but wax puddles on my table. My body was still sore from the river, my lungs heavy, my bones aching as if the current had never really let me go. But the strange thing was the quiet. The forest was never silent before. There were always the songs of birds, the hum of insects, the rustle of wind through leaves. But now, when I stepped outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. It was as if the forest itself was watching me. Perhaps it was gratitude. Or perhaps it was warning. I don't know how to explain it, but after the river I felt different. Something inside me had shifted, like a door had opened that I didn't know was there. The light that had saved the boy still lingered within me, but dimmer, pulsing weakly beneath my ribs. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't the same either. Two boys get lost by a river, but a miracle happens. Their Savior. Chapter 1. The Call of the Forest. My name is Salvador. People in the village call me Seu Salvador, your savior. I never asked for the name, and I never thought of myself as anyone special. I'm just an old man who lives alone by the edge of the forest, in a small wooden house built by my own hands many years ago. The walls are thin, and the roof leaks when the rain comes hard, but it is home. The forest keeps me company. It whispers to me when I wake, it hums softly as I sleep. The villagers think I'm strange for living here alone. But they don't understand that the forest is alive. It breathes, it listens, it remembers. When I was a child, I discovered something I never told anyone. I could feel things others couldn't. When someone was in danger, anywhere nearby, I felt a sudden vibration in my chest, like the world itself was calling out through me. Sometimes I would see flashes, small visions of where the danger was, or who was crying for help. It was like the wind carried their pain straight into my soul. At first, it frightened me. But over the years, I learned to listen to that call. It never lies. That morning, the sun had barely risen. The forest was still heavy with mist, and the air smelled of damp soil and moss. Birds sang softly, the river murmured in the distance, and everything felt calm. Too calm. I was sitting on the porch, peeling cassava roots for breakfast, when suddenly, it happened. The pulse. It struck like a lightning bolt straight into my heart. My breath froze. The world around me blurred, and my mind went silent. Then the vision came. I saw water, a wide river rushing between dark rocks. Two boys stood near the edge, laughing, throwing stones that skipped across the surface. The water was calm at first. Then one of them stepped too close, his foot slipped on the wet rock, and in an instant he was gone, swallowed by the current. The other boy screamed, reaching for his friend. He tried to help, but the river's pull was stronger. His small hands couldn't hold on. The image faded as their cries echoed inside my head. And then, nothing. Silence. The forest stopped breathing. I dropped everything. My heart was racing so fast I could barely think. I didn't need to wonder where they were. I knew that river. Everyone in the village did. It ran through the valley like a silver serpent, beautiful but deadly when angry. Without a second thought, I grabbed my walking stick and started running. The forest path was wet and uneven, the roots slippery beneath my feet. The rain from last night had turned the ground into soft mud, but I didn't care. I had no time to lose. Each step felt heavier, my lungs burning, but the pulse in my chest grew stronger, guiding me. The deeper I ran, the louder the forest grew. I could hear the calls of birds, the rush of wind, the distant roar of the river. The world was alive, urging me forward. I whispered to myself, half prayer, half promise. "Hold on, boys. I'm coming." Branches whipped against my face as I ran. My heart pounded like thunder in my ears. For a moment I thought I heard laughter again, echoes of the boys playing, alive and carefree. But I knew it wasn't real. The forest sometimes repeats what it has heard, like a memory playing itself again. The smell of water grew stronger. I was close. And then, through the trees, I saw it, the river, wild and furious, swollen from the rain. Its surface churned like boiling oil, foam and debris carried downstream. And there, just ahead, a small red shirt broke through the water, then disappeared again. One of the boys. "Hold on," I shouted, though I knew he couldn't hear me over the roar. I threw down my staff and jumped. The shock of the cold water nearly stole my breath. It cut through me like ice. For a second, my body froze, but instinct took over. I swam against the current, kicking with everything I had. The current was stronger than I remembered, wild, merciless. "Where are you?" I gasped. Then I saw him, the boy with the red shirt, flailing weakly, his head dipping under. I reached out, my fingers just brushing his sleeve. The river pulled at us both, trying to drag us down. But I wouldn't let go. I grabbed him tight and kicked toward the bank. My arms screamed, my lungs burned, but inch by inch I moved us closer. When we reached the shore, I lifted him out of the water. He coughed and gasped, eyes wide with terror, alive. But his friend was still gone. I turned back to the river, scanning desperately. No sign. Only waves. "No," I whispered. "Not this time. Not today." I dove again. The cold bit into my bones. The current spun me like a leaf. I searched blindly beneath the surface, eyes stinging, lungs screaming. And then I saw him, wedged between two rocks deep below, motionless, his small body caught by the current. I reached him, grabbed his arm, and pulled with all my strength. He didn't move. The water fought me, holding him like a prisoner. I kicked and pulled again until finally, with one desperate push, he came free. My chest felt like it was on fire. My vision dimmed. The surface above seemed impossibly far. But I held him close, and I swam. I don't remember how I reached the shore, only the feeling of his limp weight in my arms, the sand beneath my knees, the pounding in my head. I laid him beside his friend. One was coughing weakly, alive. The other, silent. I pressed my ear to his chest. Nothing. The world stopped moving. "Come on," I whispered. "Don't leave." "Not yet." I began pressing his chest, over and over, my arms trembling. Water spilled from his mouth, but still no breath. My vision blurred, but I refused to stop. I felt something inside me awaken, that same pulse, stronger than ever. My hands tingled with warmth. It wasn't the first time this had happened, that strange light, that surge of life from deep inside me. I had used it before, long ago, when another soul stood at the edge of death. But this time it was different. Heavier, stronger, brighter. I placed both hands over his heart and closed my eyes. "Take what I can give," I whispered. "Just come back." The world went silent. Then, from beneath my palms, I felt it, a faint heartbeat. Then another. The boy gasped suddenly, coughing, crying, his chest rising and falling again. For a moment, everything around me vanished, the forest, the river, the pain. There was only relief, raw and deep. I laughed, half crying, half breathless. They were alive. Both of them. But as I looked down at my hands, they trembled. The warmth was fading, and I could feel something leaving me. Strength, time, maybe even life itself. I sat there beside them for what felt like hours, listening to the sound of the river calming, the wind softening, the forest breathing again. And as I watched the two boys sleeping safely by the shore, I knew that whatever this power was, this gift, this burden, it wasn't done with me yet. Because somewhere, deep in the forest, I could still hear it, that quiet, endless whisper. "Your work is not over."